Okay. Any questions about yesterday? Do we even remember what we talked about yesterday? What did we talk about yesterday? Yes.
Basis.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Yes, question.
How much of the width were those actual bars?
If there's 8 altogether, so 4 and 4, it's 100 feet. But I don't know the rest of them. I think it's not standard the last time I looked at it. So it could be different on different ones. Honestly, we'll talk about a little bit today. The chart supplement is going to be your best resource for information specifically about the runway you're going to. That could be like a backup information to have in your head if you're coming in on an unfamiliar runway on about 8 bars across. You have about 100 feet wide, but we're a tiny plane, so 100 feet wide is more than enough. Yeah, always take a look at the chart supplement. At any unfamiliar airport, that's going to give you the actual number for the width of the runway. Okay, any other questions? Okay. Traffic pattern. How many of us are familiar with this from King School? Good. Okay. So we're gonna go over the basics right now, and then you can dig into any questions that we have about operations. So the traffic pattern is the rectangular pattern around the runway that we use for timing and for predictability of aircraft to follow a standard procedure to come into the runway and land and to take off and depart, right? So that's the purpose of a traffic pattern. Do we know what the standard turns for a traffic pattern are? Left, good. Left is standard. So that's here, left turns. This pattern that they're showing is standard. So when you hear over the radios, you hear left traffic, that means left turns, left traffic is standard. You hear right traffic, like you might at Torrance, right? If you're coming back into Torrance, we have a right traffic pattern, a non-standard traffic pattern. So you'll hear right traffic for 29er right. Right traffic means that you're making right turns around our traffic pattern, means it's not standard. So traffic means we're staying in the pattern. That means the turns we're making. Okay, so we'll start with each of these sections. I'm pretty sure all of you know this, but just in case we forgot or we didn't actually look at the King School, the upwind is our first leg, right? We're taking off from the runway. We are in our upwind from the runway. We're flying runway heading. We're flying that up to about it changes, but normally when we're transitioning from upwind to crosswind, we're turning crosswind about 300 feet under the traffic pattern altitude, which we'll get into traffic pattern altitude in a second, but we'll just run through all this. So upwinds, we're climbing up, right, from the runway heading straight out from the runway. Then we're turning our crosswind. And because this is a rectangle, right, we're making 90-degree turns on each of these. It's not, do I have a little pin? Oh, perfect. It's not this, right? Oh, yeah, it's not a circle. We're not making a constant turn that keeps us coming around. We're making, once we get to about 300 feet under the traffic pattern altitude, we're making a 90-degree turn to our crosswind. And then from our crosswind, we're making another 90-degree turn to our downwind leg. That downwind leg is parallel to the runway, right? So if we want to do math, which we probably love math, but say our runway heading is 360. What heading are we turning to in our crosswind here? If we turn to the left, what heading do we follow to be 90 degrees from our upwind? We whisper? 70? Yeah. You confident? It's not bad. These are, I'm using the cardinal directions. Okay, 270. So in the downwind, if we want to be parallel to our runway, we keep a heading that's opposite of 360, right? So 180. 180, there we go. 270 is our crosswind. We're going 180. 180 is going to be parallel to 360 on our upwind. So we're flying parallel from the runway And then when we turn base, we're making that 90-degree turn again. What way are we going now? What heading on their base? 90, good. These are our cardinal directions if we're unfamiliar. So north, west, south, east. Okay. 90-degree turn to a heading of 090 in this case. And then from base, we're making that final 90-degree turn to our final leg back to the runway to land. I think we probably understand this, but just so the most important thing we need to remember here is we're trying to make these turns as close to 90 degrees. In a traffic pattern, what's our usual bank that we're doing? Does anyone know? 30, yeah, no more than 30 degrees. So 30 degrees is a good bank, a little bit less if that feels too sharp to you. But it can't be, don't do more than 30 degrees on a turn. But 30 degrees should be perfect, takes you right into that 90-degree turn. And we're trying to make a rectangle so that we get to our turn and we're wings level. Does that make sense on why we want to turn 90 degrees and to get our wings level instead of kind of turning at a radius around here that kind of keeps one wing up? You see how if we turned like this, we would kind of always be in the turn instead of making that turn and straightening our wings. What's a guess on why we need to turn and straighten out our wings as soon as we can to fly that next leg? Anybody? Why do we need to straighten out our wings? We need to see, right? The traffic pattern, our eyes are outside. The pattern is also giving us a way to be able to see everyone else in the pattern, see traffic, other airplanes in the pattern. So if we're constantly turning like this in a circle, we're going to not be able to see someone that's out here entering into the pattern because our wing's going to be up and we're turning and we don't have a good enough visual on anyone to our left and our right. So if we straighten those wings, we're still going to be in a climb, for instance, in the crosswind, but you're able to see out both sides clearly and check for traffic. Because on this crosswind, a standard entry into a pattern is a 45-degree entry into the downwind right here, just like it shows. Just before like midfield of the runway, you enter at a 45-degree angle and then you fly in the downwind. If you're here in the crosswind and you're turning to the left and your wings up and you can't see over here, you might not be able to see this guy that's coming in right in front of you into the pattern, entering at a 45. If your wings are level, you're able to see whoever's over here who might be entering the pattern, right? Make sense? Okay.
So that's why we don't use.
Yes. Also for timing, if we keep a constant like radius like this, a turn that keeps coming, timing from other airplanes is going to be off. So it's for seeing and avoiding traffic. And also the rectangle allows us to standardize or have a predictable timing for each of the legs. Makes sense. And then it's also showing you can have different departures. The pattern keeps us around the runway for like multiple landings, right? We're practicing landing. If you're just leaving to the practice area or doing something else, going on cross country, there are other ways to depart the airport. There's a 45-degree departure. There's a straight out departure. There's also a downwind departure that takes you the opposite way. A lot of times at 29 right. If you want to go to the breakwater area, you'll do a right downwind departure. Yeah, I think this is the basis of what. Do we have any questions about this before we move on? We just need to understand right now all the legs and that the common courtesy, and we'll talk about this. We talked a little bit yesterday about how at untowered airports, it's every man for himself. There's no rules that say that you have to keep talking. There's no rules that you have to enter a pattern at a 45-degree entry. Some people are entering over here straight in on final. That's not recommended. That's very dangerous when other people are in the pattern to try to fit someone in. The timing keeps us all separated from each other and able to see each other. So when other people do things outside of the norm for entering, which they can do at a non-towered airport, we just need to be aware that the common courtesy, the standard entry is 45 degrees. That way anyone on crosswind can see us coming in to the downwind and separate, give themselves spacing from us. Or if you are coming in on a 45 and you see someone's just turning crosswind in front of you, maybe don't enter the pattern yet, right? You're gonna be right on top of them. Separate yourself for spacing because you can see them. Also right of way, back to right of way, people that are established in the pattern have the right of way. Someone that's established in the pattern on the crosswind, turning downwind has the right of way. You cannot cut them off in the 45 and come straight in front of them into the downwind. So just be courteous over there. We're trying to stay away from each other, right? I don't want to be anywhere near another plane in the air personally. So this is standard. We'll keep diving into more and more of this. I'm just tired of this picture. I'm gonna keep. Okay, great. Drawing still there. And I'd like to wait. Oh, great. Okay. Here's a different view of the pattern. So it's not so 2D, which is nice. So you can see, oh wait, 60. You can see our departure leg right here, our upwind. We're coming up on runway heading. We're turning crosswind here, following downwind, base and final. So does anyone, the crosswind and the downwind legs are based off of the wind, right? So in an ideal situation that the wind would be coming from a headwind on takeoff, right? We already went over that. So the headwind is coming towards us. The wind is coming this way. So we're taking off into a headwind. It's called a crosswind because we're turning across the wind that's supposed to be here right now. So if the wind's coming in a headwind like it's supposed to be, we're turning across the wind in a crosswind. And then a downwind, we're going on a downwind leg. That wind's pushing us from behind and then turning base and final. That makes sense. Okay. What's the next? Okay, KTOA pattern. So we already talked about what traffic pattern does Torrance have for 29 right? Right pattern. So non-standard. So these little arrows are showing this would be the runway. Here we go. This would be 29er right. And this is 29er left. Those are two runways. So 29er right, up here, you're taking off, you're on the departure leg, the upwind. We're climbing at BY 72. What's BY?
73.
Best rate of climb. We're turning crosswind, we're still climbing at BY 72. And then and both these turns, these first and second turn to the downwind are right turns, right? Right traffic, right turns. Then we were coming on the downwind, they're showing starting to, I mean, they left out a lot of this, but when we're doing traffic pattern, we're setting up to land a beam the numbers. We'll start with our flaps 1, we'll begin descending. At this point, like right here would be where the numbers are. Has anyone gone over in the plane yet about this? Are we already? Okay, that's pretty fast for second week to already be going over landings, but that's good. Okay. So I feel like we can add a lot more to this. Has anyone looked in the maneuver guide that's available in Foreign Flight under Sling Pilot Academy documents? Raise your hand if you've looked at the maneuver guide. And okay, half of people. Okay. Pull up the maneuver guide if you have your iPad with you, because this is going to be your best information for the legs of the traffic pattern and how to set yourself up in each leg. So let's see where it is. Sling Pilot Academy docs. We'll go to flight training and maneuver guides, and then Sling Light Sport Aircraft, LSA. And then maneuver guide, not the maneuver profile. Okay, it's page 10 out of 83. Okay, do we see it says traffic pattern, takeoff. The first half is takeoff to the downwind, and then the next page is downwind to landing. So this is showing you a good diagram of exactly what you need to be doing at each step in the pattern. So if you're not at landings yet, don't worry, this is way early in the training, we're on week 2. But just to prepare yourself for when you get there, this is giving you step by step exactly what you need to be doing at each point in the traffic pattern. So we can see we start with at 300 feet below traffic pattern altitude. Let's start with what is our traffic pattern altitude at Torrance? Yes. Yes, 1,100. Do we know why it's 1,100? That's expensive.
Correcting for MSL and therefore
Yes, we're correcting for the,
the height of the airport
exactly,
from the sea level.
yes. So field elevation is what they're gonna call it. The field elevation of the airport is information you can find on the chart supplement. I think I'll get into chart supplement at the end of this, but that's information we can find. And standard, if you aren't looking, which you always should be, like I said, looking at information about the airport for the specific traffic pattern. But the standard is whatever the field elevation of the airport is plus 1,000. So here at Torrance, our field elevation is 103. So they've added 1,000 to that. You get 1,100 for a traffic pattern altitude. So first leg, it's showing at 300 feet below traffic pattern altitude, you begin your crosswind turn, like we talked about. In the crosswind, you're climbing at VY, we already talked about that. Your wings level, so we can see other traffic. And you're flying about 1/2 mile from the runway. You're clearing left and right before you begin that 90-degree downwind turn. And again, limiting bank to 30 degrees. Yeah, does everyone see this? Very helpful to have it written out like this. This is a bare bones KTOA pattern on the slides, but the maneuver guide has very specifically what you need to be doing at each stage in the pattern. So yeah, if you go on the same page on the downwind leg, it's showing you want to be about 85 to 90 knots. And this is plane specific, right? Because a plane that has 2 engines is not going to be going at the same speed as we are. This is plane specific to slings. These numbers on airspeed. So 85 to 90 knots in the downwind, and you want to be about 1/2 nautical mile away from the runway. When you're turning crosswind and when you're turning base, you can also visually check the runway by looking out across or behind your shoulder. And once you're about 45 degrees from the end of the runway, you can start making that turn. If you're up in the air and you don't know when 1/2 mile away from the runway is, once you're here and turning your crosswind, you can look behind you. In this case, we're doing right pattern. So you'd look behind you off your right shoulder and you'd see the end of the runway here off your right shoulder. At like, you see how this is like a 45-degree angle right here? So you'd look off once you're about 45 degrees, then you can start that turn. Same thing with the base leg. This little arrow is going to be the base leg. You can look behind you again off your, in this case, right shoulder. And then once you're 45, it's usually to the numbers, but it could be the end of the runway or your whatever touchdown point you're aiming for. You can look behind you, see that this is a 45-degree angle that you're at, and then you can start turning that base. Let's see what they say on downwind to. Yeah, we talked about here, it's saying abeam the numbers, flaps 1, begin descent. So in our maneuver guide, it's showing abeam the runway numbers, reduce power, because you're at 85-90, and what's the speed we need to be at to put in flaps 1? What's our flaps extended speed? Anyone but Spencer. Love the answers, but anyone else? 85, thank you. 85 knots is our VFE, that's our flaps extended speed. So you want to make sure you're under 85, pull that power a little bit so you get under 85. That's saying flaps 1, check the speed, and start your descent. Very shallow, do not put the nose all the way down to start descent. You want to lose about 100 to 200 feet once you start that descent from here to your base leg. Right here, you turn just about 200 feet before you start turning that base leg. And it's saying maintain about 70 to 80 knots by the time you're turning your base leg. So you're going from about 85 to 90 knots to about 70 to 80 knots. So we're slowing down. We're beginning that base turn. We're monitoring our bank angle, so we're not going 30 degrees. We're staying coordinated, so we're not skidding around this base turn. Yes.
With the skid, we're turning like downwind or downwind to base and then base to final, because skidding would be right aileron, right rudder
Mhm.
in that turn, right?
Mhm.
But that's still staying coordinated. So how do you like,
Coordination is based on where the ball is placed, right?
Yeah.
It's not based on adding rudder into your turn every time. If your
Yeah.
turn doesn't need rudder, don't
Don't
add
add
it. If the
rudder.
ball is centered, don't
Yeah.
add more rudder. That's the
okay,
thing we're talking about. The skidding comes from too much rudder inside of the turn, inside that
Yeah,
same
so
turn that we're
pushing.
making. Exactly, it's
Yeah.
pushing us in, our nose into the turn and our tail on the outside, and that's how we skid
yeah,
around the turn, like we talked about. So too much rudder in these base to final turns is what is causing skidding. And because the sling, like we talked about, maybe you've been able to experience it now a little bit more. The rudder is very little is needed. Watch that ball in these turns and step on the ball, add some rudder if it needs it, but do not slam on the rudder. Don't add it just because that's like a habit to turn into the, make a turn and add rudder. Watch the ball in the turn. That will give you all the information you need on coordination. And if the ball's centered, you're good. You're not skidding. You're in a coordinated turn. You can't be skidding if you're in a coordinated turn. So good question. Yeah, to clarify that. So we're turning base, we're turning final, still 30 degrees. And like we talked about, 30 degrees might in the beginning seem a little scary to bank that much around. It's not unsafe. And what gets people in the problem with too much rudder is they think because they're banking so much in the turn and it looks like they're banking too much and maybe coming towards the ground and you're already close to the ground, you're getting a little scared. You add rudder to because you think it's going to tighten that turn and get you turned faster so that you're not too close to the ground, but that's not the case. So don't add rudder just to add rudder. Look at your ball, look at your turn coordinator, figure out what's going on first, and then add corrections as needed to your rudder to stay coordinated. And then on the end of our maneuver guide, it's saying on the base leg, we want to be about 70 to 75. So each time we need to be on each leg, we need to be slowing down, right? And flaps 2. So we've got flaps 1 here. We begin descent. We turn our base. We go flaps 2. And then we're slowing down to about 70, 75. Again, wings level. Why do we want to be wings level right here before we turn final? Most importantly, we want to be wings level before we turn final. Yeah, exactly. That's our biggest risk assessment right here. Turning crosswind is great to see if anyone's coming in on the downwind. But our biggest risk here is if someone has decided to come straight in, if you're not at a towered airport. Again, you're double checking as the pilot, even if you're at a towered airport, you're double checking final to make sure that nothing has happened where someone's coming in, or ATC or people too, they can mess up. Not often, but they can mess up. So you want to double check that too. You're going wings level here and you're visually checking. Look outside and call out loud, final clear. Look over to the runway clear. There's nobody else on the runway. Then make that final turn. Don't put yourself in a position to start your turn and then look and be like, oh shit, somebody's there, and then have to turn out of it. Wings level, confirm, finals clear, runways clear, then make that turn that puts you in danger of anyone else on a straight in course to the runway. Because if you see someone right here on base, you can get out of that before you're right in front of them or right below them if they're coming in straight in. Especially at Compton. So important at Compton, at non-towered. Don't not look because you're at a towered airport and just trust that no one's gonna be there. But 100,000% make sure you're looking at Compton, because people will come straight in to the runway at Compton without making a single radio call. I've had it happen multiple times where I'm on downwind, I see someone coming straight in. It's a plane that nobody knows, they haven't made any calls, and they think they own the runway, and they come straight in and land, and I had to do 360 to get myself away from them because I'm established. I should have the right of way but people are idiots. I mean, I don't know how else to say that, but other people are not, you're in charge of your own safety, right? You're in charge of your own safety in the plane, so be a little more guarded at Compton to keep yourself safe. Don't assume that everyone is gonna follow the rules. So that's why we're wings level here, and then we're turning final on the maneuver guide. It's saying reduce for final approach speed. So depending on what kind of landing you're doing, you could be going slower, closer to 55 for like a short field landing. That's way ahead in performance landings, but you could be getting that slow. Around 65 to 70 is usually a good speed to come in on a normal landing. And then flaps 3, we're doing those final flaps once we've turned final and getting ourselves completely configured for that short final approach to the runway. Okay, I feel like we've had enough of this, so I'm gonna move on. Any questions about KTOA pattern? No questions? Yes.
Say, right, close the traffic.
Yeah,
Why is it close?
close means you're gonna stay in the pattern. So that means you're planning to stay all the way to the downwind and come back to the runway and land. So that means you want to do like landing practice. You tell them closed, right closed traffic, so they know. That's another way of saying, sometimes it's a more professional way of saying that you want to do pattern work. Sometimes people will make a call and say, I want to stay in the pattern. It's a more like loose term for it with ATC. A more professional term is right closed traffic, and that means to them, they want to do pattern work. They want to stay in the pattern, and they're gonna go depart, do their crosswind base, and they're expecting you to come back to the runway and land immediately after you've done the pattern. Yeah, that's right closed traffic. Yes.
So when we tell ATC that, do
Mhm.
you have to ask again for a clearance to land, or they're probably just gonna give it?
You're going to get the clearance. Okay. So with a towered airport, you always need a clearance. Just because they've cleared you to take off in right traffic, right close traffic in the pattern does not mean that once you get to your downwind, you start putting in flaps and you can immediately turn base and keep going. What you can do is turn your own crosswind. If they haven't given you instructions on, they'll call crosswind, which sometimes they will. They'll say continue upwind, will call your crosswind. And then that means you stay in your upwind, probably up to your traffic pattern altitude. But you just stay on that upwind until they tell you what sling, whatever, turn crosswind, and then you follow their instructions. If they don't say that, you are expected at whatever time you want, which is gonna be 300 feet below traffic pattern, you are expected to turn that crosswind yourself and turn that downwind yourself. What you are not allowed to do is turn base to final without a clearance to land. So, a clearance that you, or an instruction that you might get, what you're probably going to get at Torrance, because there's so many people, is extend downwind. So they might tell you on your downwind to extend downwind, will call your base. Same thing, you're gonna keep going on this downwind, sometimes all the way to the bridge. Sometimes they forget about you and you gotta go 3 miles down to the bridge. Well, hopefully they won't do that, but there's some times where they forget that they've told you to extend downwind. But that's when you can make a call to them and ask, like, are we cleared for our base leg, or just remind them. That does not mean just because you've gotten far enough, you're like, oh, we're way far, we're good to turn base now. No, not at a towered airport. If they give you instructions to extend downwind, you're flying until they tell you to turn that base, that you're cleared. And even when they tell you to turn base, they might not say cleared to land. You have to hear the words cleared to land, 29 right, whatever the runway is, 29 left. So if they clear you to turn base, you can turn that base, and then they should be telling you clear to land. You can still turn that final, but you cannot land. If you get all the way to the runway and you haven't clarified with them, are we cleared to land? And they should remember and give you clearance to land. But if you get all the way to the runway, don't assume that, oh, they know I'm coming in on the runway. They see me, like, I'm good to land. If you've not gotten those words, you do a go around. I don't know if we've gone over, or you've gone over what a go around is, but you're just gonna keep flying back in the pattern. You're not gonna land on that pavement. Do not land without a cleared to land clearance. And you read that back. They're gonna get on you if you don't read that back correctly as well. So they say, sling whatever, clear to land, 29 right. and you say, cleared the land, and then you stop, not good enough. You have to say, cleared the land, the runway number, and the end of your call sign. You have to end your transmission with your call sign. It doesn't have to be the full thing. It can be the last three. So like 861 Sierra Lima, you can say 1 Sierra Lima at the end of your transmissions to shorten it. But if I was 861 Sierra Lima and I got cleared, they say 861 Sierra Lima, cleared to land, runway 29 right. I say cleared to land, runway 29 right, 1 Sierra Lima, right? All of those back. They have to guarantee that you know exactly what runway you're cleared to land on and who they're talking to. Does that make sense? We can, at the end, I don't think there's a slide, but at the end, we can get into a little bit of comms if you haven't totally mastered them yet. It takes a while. Don't think that you're behind if you haven't gotten the comms yet. We can go over a couple practice what to say at a towered airport around here, but yes, need that clearance to land. If you're at an untowered, you're not talking, there's no authority over there, you're not talking to anyone, you would make a call telling the traffic turning base, and you'd make a call telling traffic turning final for runway, whatever you've chosen over at Compton or another airport. So at non-towered airports, at uncontrolled, you'd be making these calls so that everyone knows what you're doing around the traffic pattern. But at a towered airport here at Torrance, do not land without a landing clearance, without those magic clear to land words. Yeah, good point to make on that so that we're all clear on traffic. Nope. Okay. Wind direction and runway usage. So I think we went over a little bit yesterday on how the runway numbers, 1, are chosen, and 2, that we want to land into the wind and we want to take off into the wind, right? So do we know how a windsock works? Where is the wind coming? Where's this wind coming from? This is a windsock, right? I guess I need to start there. This is called a windsock. We have one out at Torrance. It's like a really orange, less red, more orange out at Torrance. It's usually located in the center of the runways at the airport. So if you're ever at a different airport, look for in the center of the runways, look for a windsock. At Torrance, it's also in the center of the runways. So windsock here, where's the wind? You don't have to give me an exact degree, but where's the wind coming from? From the left or from the right? Left, right? So the wind is blowing the sock. I don't want to use it's exactly. But it's blowing up the sock, right? So if there was no wind, it would be sad and sort of droopy. I don't know what words to use, but I was good. That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it. Yeah, so if the wind is strong enough, because you can also tell without using the ATIS how much wind there is. If the wind is about 5, it's going to be more flaccid than other windsocks. If the wind is strong, then you're going to see an erect windsock, okay? That's just what it is. It's the wind is gonna push it so you can fully see the windsock. Okay, I have nothing to say about that, but we're gonna keep going. You understand the point of the wind is blowing into the sock.
Yeah.
So you're looking, the end of this windsock is not pointing at the direction the wind is coming from. This is how people get a little confused. They think that this is pointing, the wind is coming from over here, but the wind is blowing into the sock, doing what it does. Okay. So at this point, we know what runway do we want to take off on versus 36 versus 18.
36.
36, right? The wind means it's coming from over here. Use my little pen again. The wind is coming more specifically here, blowing that sock here. So we want to take off on this runway into the wind. If the wind was coming from 190, if it was reported wind from 190, where do we want to take off? Which runway?
6.
Still runway 36, right? It's still over here. The wind is coming from 030. Where do we want to take off? 18, right? So that means the wind would be over here, blowing across this way. So we want to go opposite runway. Do we understand wind direction and how that changes what runway we're using, right? Okay, good. And there's a couple different variations. I think the windsock is pretty universal. That you're gonna find at airports. There's a couple of variations in the what's it called, the written exam for private. So look over, I don't know if there's like a wind triangle, or say it again.
Yeah, there's the triangle, and I think that's like
A plane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So look over those if they're confusing, because some of them don't work exactly where it's the wind making the motion of where the wind's coming from. It's some of them are actually pointing in the direction of where the wind's coming from. So for the written, review those, because windsock's not the only one on there, but windsock is gonna be pretty universal at every airport in my. Okay. I think we got this. Let's move on. Okay, back to wake turbulence and how to avoid it. Okay. Wake turbulence is created by wingtip vortices. Do we remember talking about wingtip vortices in aerodynamics? Okay. Does anyone want to give a stab at how wingtip vortices are created? Okay.
So our propeller turns one way, right? And it's causing the wind to go around the plane.
Mhm.
And then when the plane is actually moving forward through the wind, all that wind over the surface of the wing gets dispelled off and off and off and off to the sides.
Mhm.
And it catches that wingtip and it creates a spinning kind of movie.
It's not just the propeller though. Anytime we are creating lift on the wings, we're creating that low and high pressure
Oh, yeah.
above, right? And we talked about how high pressure always wants to go to low pressure. It's also that pressure equalization that is causing wingtip vortices. So just because that high pressure at the bottom is always flowing to low pressure at the top, it's creating that circular movement of air over the wing as well. And that over the biggest part of the wings moves down to the smaller, thinner part of the wing. And by the time it gets to the end of the wing tip, it's been moving around and around and around. And then it basically comes off the end of the wingtip in a spirals like this in the picture. Can you see that? Does that make sense to everyone? The high pressure from the bottom of the wing when we're creating lift is creating a pressure equalization where the high pressure at the bottom wants to go to the low pressure at the top, which is creating this spiral movement that makes it all the way down the wing and to the wingtip. And it's so small that it kind of just comes off the end of the wingtip in a spiral. And the wingtip vortices move out, like outward on the wing and back behind the wing. So they swirl back behind the wing and kind of fall down behind it. Okay, so wake turbulence, like we just talked about, what kind of drag is being produced here? Do you remember? Because we're talking about induced, perfect. Induced drag is a byproduct of lift. So because wake turbulence and wingtip vortices are created because of our wings creating lift, they are also creating induced drag. This is a result of induced drag. So the bigger the plane, the bigger the turbulence. I think that probably makes sense to most people. It's also at its worst when you're heavy. So obviously heavier planes. If you think about a heavier, bigger plane compared to this tiny little sling that we're flying, a heavy, bigger plane needs more lift to get that off the ground, right? We don't need a lot of lift. That plane will start flying with just a little bit of wind. A heavy, like 767 or whatever you're flying, needs a ton of lift to get it off of the ground. So it's creating more lift than we are, which means it's creating more wingtip vortices, more wake turbulence than we are, right? So the wingtip vortices are at its worst when the plane is heavy, clean, meaning no flaps are down, and slow. So slow meaning it's just taken off or it's just coming into land. It's at its slowest air speeds, right? Okay. Are we understanding a little bit the concept of this. We talked about this picture showing, I think I spoke on it a little bit about how parallel runway situations, you also have to be aware that because those are coming off the back of the wingtips and falling behind, doesn't mean that you're safe behind a jet on a parallel runway if you have wind that's pushing those vortices onto your runway and you're in a path. Can we see that here? The wingtip vortices are coming off of this jet. The wind is coming from, in this case, up here on the northeast. It's pushing the end of those wingtip vortices into the path of this little plane that's on a parallel runway. Okay. Also, it's not on the slide, but we talked about in our plane, where do we want to take off? At what point do we want to rotate if a giant plane, giant jet has taken off just before us? Where do we want to be? Yeah, Mitch. Yeah, go ahead.
About like third.
Yeah, so where do we want to take off?
Up.
Where do we rotate before? Perfect. So we want to, the best practice is to wait a while to let the wingtip vortices dissipate. So usually about 3 minutes, which seems like a lot of time to sit there, but it's better to wait, especially if it's an actual jet in front of you, than just maybe like a slightly larger plane. So you can wait at the whole shoreline and wait for those to dissipate, or you can watch for the rotation point of this jet and make sure that your rotation point, the point at which you rotate and lift off the ground, is ahead of that point. So we see if the jet lifts off here and we lift off here, their wingtip vortices are falling here, but we've already taken off. So all that's going underneath us. It won't be a problem. It's falling behind them underneath us if we've taken off at that point. When do we want to land? Versus if a big jet has landed in front of us, where are we landing? Perfect. So we watch their touchdown point and we land beyond that touchdown point on the runway. That way, anything, the wingtip vortices that are trailing behind them do not interrupt our landing. We've gone above and beyond their wingtip vortices and landed at a further point than at which they have landed. Makes sense. I think this will be on the quiz, so let's tell me now if you don't understand it. Okay. Landing site pictures. So something we have to understand with landing site pictures is one, with center line, when we're trying to stay on the center line, we do not want to make the center line center to us, right? You don't want to put the center line where it comes exactly in the middle of where you're looking, because we're not in the center of the plane, right? We're on two seaters. The middle of the plane is actually in the middle between you and your instructor. So it's going to look a little bit off of center in your eye line. Most people are saying the center line is going to come in on when you're in the left seat. It's going to come in on your right leg, on your right knee. So be putting that center line a little bit off of your center of vision you're looking, just put it a little bit to your right, and that will keep you on center line. Also, for landing site pictures, too high and too low look like this. What you want with a proper descent angle is to pick your aiming point. Let's say the numbers are really easy, they're huge on the runway right to look at. Pick your numbers and follow the numbers, a proper descent angle. The numbers will just get bigger in your field of view. They'll just get bigger. They won't look like they're getting away from you. They won't look like they're coming closer to you or on either side. They'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger as you approach your aiming point, right? And then you can see here too high, it looks like you're coming in right down on top of it. Here too low, you can barely even read the numbers because you're coming in flat, like right on top of it. That's going to result in like a flat landing where you just kind of flop on the runway because you're not doing a steep enough angle or descent angle. This right here, if as you keep going, the numbers will just get bigger and bigger on your windscreen or whatever you want to call the front. It'll just get bigger and bigger in your field of view. Does this make sense? It's a little bit further than I think most of you are going to be right now with landing, but just remember that when you get to landings. Okay, wind correction. So They have a good example here talking or comparing how wind correction works in the air versus how currents work in the water. So as you can see, it's really easy to fly a straight line in the air if there's no wind. You just fly straight. Same if there's no current in the water, you can move straight. If there's current in the water that's moving, that's coming from the left, you're gonna, instead of, if you don't add any correction, you're just gonna float off to the right like this. Same as if you ever like get in the ocean and you're like right in front of all your stuff in the water, and then all of a sudden you look back at the water and all of your stuff is completely down the beach and you've moved all the way down. It's the same where it's moving you like this. The wind works the exact same way. If you don't make wind correction in the air, you can't fly that straight line. The wind is going to push you further and further away off course like this. So we correct for that with something called crabbing or crab angle. Have we heard of crabbing? It's called crabbing because a crab moves in a similar way, right? We all know how a crab moves. A crab will be looking at you straight on and it will be moving back and forth on opposite left and right. So it works the same way where we want to put with crabbing, we want to put our nose of the plane into the wind so that we are kind of situated into the wind, but we're still flying straight forward. Does that make sense? So we correct by just the winds coming in here. We put our nose just a little bit into the wind and we're able to keep moving straight on this path, even though we're turned, so our wings are not straight on that path. We'll get a little more into this, but this is crabbing. We use it a lot. You can use it in the air when you're doing across country to keep on your path if you have a path to set. More often, we're going to be using crabbing on takeoff when we're on our upwind. If we have a crosswind that we've taken off with, on our upwind, we want to crab into the wind so we keep that runway heading, right? If we want to keep our runway heading so we don't get pushed off into the pattern, in this case, if you're on 2-9 right, the wind coming from the left will push you into your downwind. You don't want to be in your downwind on your upwind. You want to be parallel on your upwind to your downwind. You need that spacing. Even worse, if you're on 2-9 left and 2-9 right is off to your right and you have a wind coming from the left, you can get pushed into the parallel runway. If someone is on the upwind, you will get pushed into their path. Very, very bad. So we want to correct by crabbing into the wind, and that keeps us on our runway heading, keeps us on a straight line from the runway all the way up until we turn our crosswind. Same on the downwind. You want to crab into the wind so you're not getting pushed away from the pattern or closer to the runway. To keep a good distance, we're still crabbing into the wind to keep our straight line parallel to the runway on our downwind. People also use it if you have a crosswind coming into land on final, but not on short final. This is the thing we'll get into a little bit later with landing, and your instructor will probably tell you about this. But when we're landing and we have a crosswind, we can do basically, a lot of people do 2 different corrections, because we could see if we flew a crab angle all the way to the runway, where our longitudinal axis is off, right? We want to land straight with both of our main gears on either side of the center line. If we're flying down at a crab angle, we're not longitudinally aligned with the center line. That's bad. That's going to cause a landing where we're side loaded, where we land on one gear first, hard, and then we have to basically flop down the other side in the nose gear. So what people do is they start their final crabbing into the wind because it's easy, and then we do a slip maneuver, a side slip, to pull our nose back to center. We can get a little bit into this later on, but we already talked about slip, but it's called a side slip when we do this is what I was talking about when I said that slips are a helpful maneuver, because we don't want to increase airspeed on our final approach, right? We want to keep a low airspeed and we want to correct. This is how we correct for the wind, because we know when we're side slipping, we have our wing dipped into the wind and then we're adding opposite rudder, right? Skidding is adding that same rudder Slipping is adding opposite rudder. Do we remember that from slips and skids? So by adding, if we slip right as we're coming in on short final to correct for that wind, we've got the wind correction by putting our wing into the wind, but we're adding opposite rudder, which basically pulls our nose back to center line and keeps us aligned with center line. This is getting a little far ahead, but because we're talking about when we would use crabbing, you would not crab all the way down to the runway. That's not recommended. Some people may teach that, I'm not sure, but it's not the best because you're off center line, you're not aligned with center line. So there are a couple different ways to correct for the wind when you're landing, especially with a direct crosswind, but crabbing is mainly used in the pattern and you can use it on final up until a point. Do not use it, would not recommend it for short final onto the runway. We can get into that a little bit later if we have more questions when we're actually doing landing practice, but we'll go to turns around a point. So for turns around a point, how many people have done this over the lighthouse? Good amount, like half, okay. So when your instructor taught you, or if you're just hearing about it now, turns around a point, you pick a point, like the lighthouse, in this case on the picture, it's just a bunch of trees. We want to create an exact radius, keep a constant radius around the point that we've chosen. So that does not mean that we're flying a circle around a point and looking outside and watching that point the whole time. We want to correct for the wind in a way that's going to make a perfect radius around the point that we've chosen. Does this make sense? Okay. So when we're doing turns around a point, the biggest factor is correcting for the wind so we can keep that radius, right? So do we know when we would enter a turns around a point maneuver? What leg we want to enter? Yes. It's going to be the downwind. The downwind is when we want to enter. So on almost all of your maneuvers, you're going to be entering from the downwind leg. So say this is the lighthouse out of the breakwater. Okay, let's start with how can we figure out what leg is the downwind out in the water? If we're over the water at the lighthouse and we want to start our maneuver from the downwind, how do we figure out where the downwind is? Anybody? Say again? Not towards the shore. The wind could be coming anywhere, right? What are we looking at down there? Yeah, Ramon.
You look at, on the water, so if you can see some ripples on. it,
Exactly.
Look at it's anchored out there.
Exactly. Exactly. That's our best indicator out there. We're lucky with the water. You can also, there's a wind indicator in the plane, but don't always trust that. Use it sparingly. But the best indicator out there is the water. The water will tell us where the wind is coming from. And the ships also help. If there's ships docked out there, they will be pointed into the wind. So look down as you're coming in to do your turns around a point. Look down at the water and the ships and figure out where the wind is coming from. Most likely it's going to be coming from the west. So a lot of the times you're going to set up where you're going downwind on, what is that, on the right side of the lighthouse, and then making a circle towards the shore and back around. So a lot of the times it's going to be coming from the west, behind you from the shore, but look down, the boats and the water ripples are the best indicator for downwind. So what do we do for each of these legs? If we start, where's my pen? It's great that I found this pen. Okay, so if we want to start in the downwind, the wind's coming over here, right? So this would be our downwind leg. We enter it like this. We come from over here and then enter around, start our circle on the downwind. The downwind leg is going to be your steepest bank. Do we have any guesses on why we need a steep bank on our downwind? Exactly. Tailwind's going to push you. You want basically less surface area for the wind to come over to keep pushing you. So you're going to do a steep bank and a shallower bank as you come around to your upwind. We see where we're shallowest bank is going to be straight into the wind. And that's going to be slowest, right? Because the wind's coming straight at us. It's going to slow down our ground speed. So we're basically doing our shallowest bank here. at our slowest ground speed. And then as we turn into the wind around, we start steepening that bank so that when the wind becomes a tailwind again, we're at our steepest bank because it's going to push us, right? So if we weren't at a steep bank here, the wind would be pushing us around here. Or if we're at a shallower, or what is it? We want to be shallow here. So if we're at a steep bank here, it could push us into the circle this way towards our point. Does this make sense on where the wind is pushing us? So if we have a shallow bank here, less surface area for it to push us. If we put that wing up right here on the end, all that wind would be pushing the underneath the wing and pushing us into the middle of the circle. So we start steepening our bank over here, and then we keep that steepest bank on our downwind so that we can keep that turn radius, keep a standard radius out here. And if we're too shallow here, it's going to push us forward and do a outside of the turn here. There's the arrow. This is starting to make a little sense, okay? Biggest things we want to remember with turns around the point. First, we're entering on the downwind leg. So figure out where the wind is coming from, enter on the downwind. Secondly, we want to understand our steepest bank is going to be at our direct downwind leg, and our shallowest bank is going to be our direct upwind leg. These concepts are going to be universal across our ground reference maneuvers because we do turns around a point and we're tested on turns around a point, and we also do S turns. It's the same idea. Both of them are creating like similar, keeping a constant radius around, but instead of a full turn, like a turn around a point, S turns is like half circles back and forth. It's the same concept. We still enter on the downwind on our steepest bank. So we'll enter, we'll do our steepest bank to keep our turn tight, our radius around here. We'll shallow out just as we're facing into the wind so we don't get pushed to the middle of the circle. And then we'll start steepening that back. We can come back to this, but these are the most important points we need to understand for wind correction in our ground reference maneuvers. On top of that too, do we know what altitude we're doing ground reference maneuvers at? We're doing them at like 3,000 above the lighthouse. 1,000, yes. 1,000. So you're going to get down to 1,000 over the lighthouse, and then you're going to start your maneuver on the downwind. Okay. I think we got the gist of that. So we'll move on. I think S turns is next. So we'll basically just be reiterating exactly what I said. Okay, not S turns yet. This is called a rectangular pattern. A rectangular pattern is mimicking a traffic pattern, right? So we don't actually practice these in the air a lot. I would say almost never, because we don't have a field in the middle of nowhere to practice this. You have to get down to 1,000 feet, and anywhere that has a field that we could do a rectangular pattern around is densely populated. So we can't get down to 1,000 feet over, the areas around here that are populated. And there's not really any reference out in the middle of the water to do a rectangle around. So when we practice traffic pattern, this is what we're doing. The rectangular pattern is preparing you for the traffic pattern. So we don't practice it here at Sling in the practice area, but it's the exact same concept of a traffic pattern that we just talked about. So it says the wind is coming from here. So we have our upwind, where you don't have any wind correction because you're flying straight into that wind, right? And then as you turn crosswind, you have to crab, put your nose, see how your nose is pointed this way into the wind. You have to crab into the wind so that you don't get pushed. You see this dotted line? You don't get pushed on that dotted line to the middle. So you keep a square or a rectangle around it. Same with when you get to the downwind. If it's directly, the wind is coming this way, there's no wind correction needed. You're just getting pushed faster over the ground. And then when you turn base, that wind here, you're putting your nose into the wind, means you're crabbing this way into the wind so you don't get pushed outside on that leg. Are we understanding this a little bit? Okay. This is wind correction basically for traffic pattern. This is going to be the same concept as traffic pattern. Okay. Okay, this is the same idea that we just talked about. If you want to create a constant radius around a point with no wind, it's really easy. You just do a circle around, you don't have to correct for wind. If there is wind coming, you have to correct, oh, there's my arrow. You have to correct for the wind on especially your upwind and your downwind, so you don't get pushed further into the turn or away. So you see how the wind is coming from the bottom here. They started this turn, but the wind pushed them all the way to the other side of the road because they didn't make that correction, right? Down here, the wind is coming from the right. So they started that circle, but they got pushed to more of like an oval shape because they're being pushed outside the turn here. And then the wind here, you can't see it great, but they're making the corrections they need to where they have a steep bank here and they have a shallower bank here. So they're keeping that radius. It's exactly what we just talked about. So just more pictures showing that. S turns. Okay. Same thing. I think a lot of you have practiced this. Where we do this is over the breakwater. So that one rocks, the breakwater out there is a great place to do S turns because it's just a long line you can follow right over it and do S turns. So they use a road in this case. It's the same thing. You want something straight that you can follow over. So you're basically starting your entry. Where do we start our entry on? What leg? Downwind. Good. See how the wind is coming from behind? We start our entry on the downwind. We do our steepest bank immediately, and then we start to shallow it as we come to that headwind. The wind is coming from down here. As we come onto a headwind, wings level across our point that we've chosen, our road or breakwater, and then we start from the shallowest bank and go into the steepest bank again. It just goes back and forth, and you're constantly correcting with S turns because you're only doing a half radius on these. See how, I mean, it'd be easy to, this, if we just continued it, would be turns around a point. But we're doing it across a road, in this case, the breakwater. And an important point to make is in order to make perfect S turns, you have to be wings level across that point that you've chosen. So when you get to the breakwater, you have to wing level and then start your turn back out. You can't keep that turn in and then turn the opposite way. You won't get a perfect radius or a perfect S turn doing that. So we cross wings level on the downwind, we start wings level, and then we start with our steepest bank. As we come around, we shallow our bank to our shallowest bank, back to wings level. We're on a headwind here, and then we start with a very shallow bank and we steepen it for the next turn until we've got our steepest bank right before we go wings level across the road. Do you understand? Yes.
It's pretty beneficial to be looking outside, right? While you're doing
Exactly.
all this,
Yeah.
because that's the whole point, because then you can kind of feel
Yes,
when you need to roll out or not.
exactly. The point of S turns and turns around a point are, and all VFR flying is looking outside, is coordination and looking outside. So looking outside will tell you, you'll be able to feel if you're coordinated, and you basically do like you could do 3 seconds outside, 1 second inside. Just verify inside with your instruments that you have your speed is, okay, when we're doing this, we're at maneuvering speed. Do we remember what maneuvering speed is? Yes. 91. Okay. So when we're checking inside, we're checking that we're around maneuvering speed, that we're holding our airspeed, and we're checking that we're holding our altitude, and then we can check our ball for coordination, and then our eyes are back outside looking around. Because this is going to be, like you said, most helpful because you have to look outside and see where you are, where the road's coming up, and back around to the other side. So we're keeping our eyes outside and we're checking and verifying inside that we're on altitude, we're on airspeed, and we're coordinated. But coordination with these is also felt inside the plane. You should be able to, with your instructor, do some coordination maneuvers to feel it, but you should be able to feel when you're not coordinated. That's part of this as well. The turns, you want coordinated turns, yes.
We also probably should power, right? Because we're gonna be changing the angle of banks, so it's gonna.
Yes, it depends on how strong the wind is, because you will, if the wind is strong coming in from a downwind to a headwind, you will need to bump some power and pull some power, so you're not, that wind is not pushing you
Yeah.
too fast and too slow. On a relatively calm wind day where you just have like 5, single digit knots out there, keeping your power around the same is ideal, but just know you're not set on the power.
Yeah.
So don't not use the power. Use the
Might
power
need
to
it,
help
though.
you. Exactly.
It's not a lot.
Yeah, it's not a lot. You shouldn't be moving it the entire time. That's bad. But this is not limiting your use of power. So if your airspeed is low, add that power. If your airspeed's too high, pull that power. Fix with your power if needed. But the ideal is, especially with less strong winds, you shouldn't have to be on that power a lot. You should be pretty set in your power and just using your bank to shallow and steepen. It should be around the same maneuvering speed. Okay, we'll keep going. Actually need to.
Stop something. Well, when
Not, it happens so fast that you don't really need to crab. You should be correcting with your bank angle rather than crabbing. Usually they say like about 3 seconds, is when you start your steepest bank here. So immediately the only time you would crab is when your wings level right into the wind, but you should be there for only like a max of 3 seconds and then you're starting that bank again. So there's not really any time to do a crab angle. A crab angle is like a prolonged period where you're trying to follow a straight line path. So yeah, here we're just using bank to correct for the wind to keep us at a constant radius. Crabbing, we won't really have time for in this. Yeah. Keep going. Okay, we're done. Okay. I thought they'd have a slide on. Let's go back. I thought that, first of all, does anyone have any questions about ground reference maneuvers? Let's go over the basics so we're all clear again. What altitude are we doing ground reference maneuvers at? Everyone, 1,000, right? And we're entering our ground reference maneuvers on what leg? Downwind. Okay, good. What other things do we need to go to? What is our traffic pattern altitude at Torrance? Exactly. And what turns are we making at Torrance? What pattern do we have?
Right,
Right pattern, right traffic, good. What standard though? Left traffic, right? Let's do that. I kept referencing the chart supplement to find traffic pattern altitude, to find you can also find the calm winds runway. If there's something called a calm winds runway when if you're going to an untowered airport and you're not sure which runway to use or the winds exactly what it's called, the winds are calm. They haven't chosen one, the winds are like under 5 knots. They have a preferred runway, that's their winds calm runway. Do we know where to find the chart supplement? It's also called the AFD, the Airport Facility Directory. I don't know why they changed the name, but do we know where we can find airport information using the AFD or the chart supplement? It's on ForeFlight, yeah.
Right.
We go to yeah, let's all go to Torrance, type in KTOA. Go to the info tab, that first tab, and then scroll on the side. It starts with ATIS, weather frequencies. Scroll on that side and you'll see chart supplement and then it says A/FD under it. Does everyone see that? Yes, no, you're good. First, type in the airport that you're going to. We're gonna do KTOA, right? So type in under airports, this airport tab on ForeFlight on the bottom. Then we're going to the first tab under all the airport information, that first info tab, and then scroll on the side where it says frequencies all the way down to where it says chart supplement, and then it says A/FD. go there. So,
Click on AF here.
yes. AFD is Airport Facility Directory. It means chart supplement. It's the same thing. They added the AFD recently. It used to just be called chart supplement, but it means the same thing. Okay, take a look at that for a second while I pull it up on the screen. Up here.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Does everyone have the page pulled up? Anyone not looking at the page? Okay. There's a lot of information on here. This is what you should be checking before you go to any other airport. You need to look over this for Torrance since we fly here most often, but any airport that you're flying to on a cross country or you're just flying for landing practice, you need to pull up the chart supplement for each of the airports and go over all of this information. So at the top, it's gonna say this 103 right here, that's our field elevation. We know 103 is our field elevation here. That's how you can find the field elevation for the airport. And we're gonna look down on runway 29 right here. You see how it says right traffic, right TFC right there? So right traffic for 29 right. See that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then it says 11 right, also says right traffic. So this is where we would see if there's non-standard traffic patterns at the airport. If it doesn't say right traffic, it's standard left turns, okay? Let me go back. Also here, you can see service, you can see what fuel they carry. 100 low lead is at the airport. And more information, none of this is super important except for we get down to at Torrance, we have a lot of noise sensitive areas. So this is a paragraph that's giving you information on all the noise sensitive areas, no low approaches, no full stop, taxi back permitted on Saturday and Sunday between these hours. Do we all know Zulu time? Doesn't have to be off the top of your head. We know that all on these airport documents, it's gonna be in Zulu time and we have to correct for Pacific Standard Time. So it's gonna say UTC is -8, but daylight savings is -7 on that time. So that's how we correct for whatever number they're giving us in Zulu. We either do -8 or -7, depending on whether we're on daylight savings time or not. I thought they were gonna get rid of that, but they didn't, so we still have to do -7 or -8. Then airport remarks. This paragraph down here is also important to read. So we're looking for a non-standard traffic pattern. We're looking at our airport elevation for our traffic pattern altitude, but also down here in airport remarks, it's telling us about bird flocks. There's a lot of birds here. It tells us the airport is closed to departure between these times on weekdays and between these times on weekends. That's very important. Obviously, if we're going to fly to an airport, we need to figure out these times and make sure the airport's not closed while we're trying to fly there. Also,
Are those times in Zoom?
yeah, when it has the Z behind it, that's gonna be Zulu. Zulu with the little plus on it. So we're gonna have to convert all of those as well. And then what else do we have? Landing fee, that's important for us to read, landing fee. We have a Torrance, I'm sure we know that because you had to pay for it in the program. And down here, if there is, with airport remarks, if there is a traffic pattern that does not just add 1,000 to the field elevation, it will be written in airport remarks. I'm trying to think of an airport that has a non-standard. But in the airport remarks, it will say TPA. And it will usually specify for single engine versus multi-engine, they'll have different traffic pattern altitudes. So in this paragraph, you'll see TPA, single engine, and it will have a number. So that will be your traffic pattern altitude. If it doesn't, like our airport doesn't have anything about the traffic pattern down here in this paragraph, we just add 1,000, and it's like rounded down. So 1,100, we're just adding 1,000 to our airport elevation. Does this make sense? We don't have to know everything on this page right now. It's just talking about, yes.
So it's no touch no landings? It doesn't noise.
Yeah, they've started allowing them at certain times during the day, but no stop and goes, yeah. And I don't think they've fully allowed them yet. Basically, no touch and goes. Right now, it's no touch and
Is
goes.
that something that Compton does? Because it's not
No.
tower, but we can't even do that there.
No, you can.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, let me look at Compton. I think actually Compton's doesn't say, or it does say you can't do that either. Because of the traffic is so. Well, it's called Casey. Yeah, no touch and go landings. It does say at Compton. So this is why it's important to read the. It's also a really short runways over there, and it's so busy, they don't want people constantly in the pattern. They have to add some timing on that to separate people. So yeah, this is non-towered, but it does say no touch and go landings, so we should not be doing touch and goes. And then here's where it says calm wind runways. That's what we were talking about before. 25 left and 25 right are calm wind runways. So that means when we come over to Compton, and if there's no one else in the pattern, we're kind of deciding what runway we want to use. If there's no wind or calm winds like under 5 knots, then we choose 25 over 7. I've never even been over at Compton when 7 was being used. Over at Compton, there's like a airspace, the Hawthorne airspace is like right here on the end of the upwind. So it's really close to the traffic pattern over here. Just be aware of that when you doing your crosswind from your upwind. Look at the airspace in front of you so you don't go too far upwind into that other airspace. I'm sure your instructor will go over this as well, but this is an idea of what we're looking for, specifically with traffic pattern on our chart supplements. Yeah, over here, runway closed nights indefinitely, only VFR ops during the day. All this is important information to know about an airport before we go over to land there, right? So make sure we're reading over. There's going to be a whole lesson on what every single part of the chart supplement means. I don't want to overwhelm people right now, but right now, look at the airport remarks. It will tell you all traffic remains south of the airport, also important. Okay. I think we understand the beginning of that. What else? Is anyone having trouble with comms? Yes, okay, I like the honesty, I love the honesty.
Really bad.
Yeah. Okay, what helps a lot of people in the beginning? Do we all know how to listen to live ATC? I'm sure your instructor has told you about this too. Listening to other people make calls and how their wording and the order that they're putting their words in is helpful to listen to get an idea and to anticipate what tower or ground is going to say to us is also helpful to get an idea so we're not surprised when they say something back and we have to reply and we have no idea what they just said. So live ATC is helpful. There's also a couple apps. I'll have to find the names of them for the next class. Yes, plain English.
I didn't love it.
Okay, yeah. I didn't use it either. Okay, that's good to know because I didn't use it either.
It's kind of expensive. Like,
Yeah, just
yeah.
exactly.
And
Okay. Listening will help. Also, we can do just having like a little script. Have any of your instructors like written out a little script for you on what to say? No, we're shaking our heads. Okay. I'm going to give you all a little script so that we can all practice what we're writing. This would be a good last part of class thing that we can go over for fun. So I had a really great instructor who typed out a little script for me. And I might put it in the chat, but I'm gonna see if this works. See if this works. Dang. I really thought I had that. Anyone techie? Yes.
Not tech, I have
Okay.
my little notepad here,
Yeah.
I kind of write down what I write,
Mhm.
or look at it. It'll show ground and then like plane number, like where you are. It kind of has like a little script. I kind of abbreviate it because I try to write fast, but I'm waste time.
That's really good.
But you can flip through most of it because some of it's just random
I
notes.
think they changed the tables,
Yeah.
try comp.
Okay. Helpful. Awful split. Freak.
Is this script, or are you just talking about like, where you calling?
Yeah, like, I'm really trying to show you all my. But like right here, ground taxi clearance, I have written out who, you say Torrance ground, sling blank. Where, say Tuesday, or what taxiway you're at. Well, this word. I think this is just back to.
I forgot. Thank you.
Damn, it's back to this, okay.
They were also using the Apple TV to stream it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, this little, okay. I don't have it figured out enough.
Yeah, my case, okay.
This one, yeah,
Yeah, so it should probably go HDMI out.
that sounds smart.
iPad maybe?
I know I tried that one, it's just a blank screen. Dang, okay. We still have 30 minutes, so I'm just gonna type it out on Word. What I have on my iPad, and then you can copy what you like. Okay. We have Microsoft Word. Oh. Continue for 3. No. Okay. This is type. No. This using this. Why can't everything work normally? Notes. Notepad. Ooh, okay. Okay. Taxi clearance. Okay, ground taxi clearance. So this is when you either pull up to a taxiway or you go to the fuel pits. And park your plane, and then you'll make your first call to ground in order to get a taxi clearance. What frequency are we using for ground? Perfect, 120.9er. Okay, so first we want to start with who. How do I make this? It's not any bigger. Won't. Alright, there we go. Woo. Okay. Who? So we're gonna say Torrance, ground, sling, blank, whatever your tail number is. Then you're gonna say where you are. Maybe you're at the fuel pits. Maybe you're at taxiway Delta. a lot of times, are we usually at the fuel pits with our instructor? Do they usually pull over? In park most of the time? Okay. So a lot of the times you'll say at the fuel pits, so we'll say. Where's my? At fuel pits. At fuel pit, I don't know if it's singular or plural. I think I say fuel pits. Yeah, I usually say pits, so I'm just I'm second guessing myself now that I'm saying it out loud to all of you, but what is what you want to do, right? So you'll say taxi is what you want to do, and then if you want a requested runway, you'll say that runway, so you can say 29er right if you want 29er right, or you'll say 29er left if that's what, hello, or 29er left if that's what you want. A lot of the times, I don't care, so I don't request which runway, but you could just say taxi if you don't have a requested runway, and then you'll add also what your departure, ground likes to know what your departure plan is. So ask your instructor before you make the call, are we doing a straight out departure? Are we doing a right downwind departure? Whatever they want to do. So you can also add right downwind departure or straight out, or there's also a right crosswind departure. There's a lot of options, but whatever option you're doing,
Right.
say, yeah, you can do right 270 as well. There's a lot of options. So, okay, and then weather is at the end. That's when we say with information blank. Whatever the ATIS told us is our information, right? Okay. So what that sounds like: Torrance Ground, sling 861 Sierra Lima at the fuel pits. Taxi, if you don't want to add, taxi 29er right downwind departure with information Bravo, whatever that is. You don't have to add what, unless your instructor tells you that they want 29er right or 29er left, it's not needed to request. You could just say taxi straight out departure with information Bravo, and they'll give you whatever runway is more available. Sometimes 29er right is insane, and there's like 10 planes in the run up for that. Maybe you want to take 29er left and get out of there faster with your run up. So does this make sense? Write a little script. Keep this with you when you're making the call. It's really helpful to just have this down there on your leg when you make the call. So if you freeze up, which everyone does, where you got it all ready, and then you press the button and you're like, I forgot what to say. Have this written down so you can look down and be like, okay, towards ground, sling, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but we all know this isn't the end, right? We have a lot more calls to make. So next, after the ground clearance, they're going to say whatever our clearance is for taxi, and we have to repeat back everything they say and confirm before we're able to start moving. So they're gonna give clearance and we're gonna say back the clearance. A lot of the times we're gonna say taxi. Actually, I'll put that in response. We're gonna say taxi. Via blank, blank, blank. This makes sense. Some people do it the opposite way. I prefer saying taxi runway via whatever their instructions are, because it leaves out any extra words in between there. Some people say taxi via whatever the instruction is to 29er right. I don't like the to. I don't like saying to 29er right, because we need to separate the numbers versus what we're talking about. This makes it very clear: taxi 29er right, taxi 29er left, via, and then whatever taxi instructions they give you. So a lot of times this will be taxi 29er, oh my god, 29er right via Echo Alpha Juliet. And then we have to add in our sling blank blank blank. Don't forget that part. So taxi 29er right via Echo Alpha Juliet, then add sling 8. No, not 8. Sling. We'll start with 4 Sierra Lima. Let's say we have that. Why do I keep doing that? 4 Sierra Lima. Say I have 4 Sierra Lima. So there's an example of what we say. Taxi 29er right via Echo Alpha Juliet, end it with sling 4 Sierra Lima, if that's your tail number, the end of it. So this is example. Okay? Making sense? How much time? Okay, we still have a little bit of time. So now, when we are at tower, we're gonna do tower takeoff clearance. Ooh. Okay, tower frequency, do we know that by heart? What's North Tower, main one?
133.7.
Yes. There's technically a 5 back there, but you don't even enter it, so it doesn't matter. Do we know South Tower?
1 points.
Yes, very good. Okay. Same thing with the who, what, or who, where, what. Who, always start with who you are and who you're talking to. More so backwards. Always start with who you're talking to, and who you are. So first we're gonna say Torrance Tower. Hold on. Torrance Tower, sling, blah blah blah. Then we say where we are, holding short, runway, blah blah blah. 29er right or left. If we're at Torrance, it will be one of those, so I can go in that. How do I do it? 29er right or 29er. There we go. I'm bad. Okay. Holding short of 29er right or 29er left, wherever you are. Then you say what you're doing. So you give them another indication of your departure that you want to do. So you say straight out departure, or same thing, or right downwind, or whatever you're doing. It's that simple. You don't need to add any more words. I guess pet peeve for me is adding a bunch of unnecessary words, which I know in the beginning is a learning curve, but later on, ATC is busy, right? There's so many other people that need to make calls, that need to get in what they're gonna say. So don't sit on the radio and be like, tower, we're at where are we? 29er right, and we're in front of the hold short line, and we're gonna be doing a straight out departure today for the practice area. Way too many words. They don't need to know all that, right? And this takes practice to get it. Like the uhs are also, I say all the time, so that's not the uhs aren't what I'm talking about. It's just giving too much information. They need to know who you're talking to, who you are, where you are, you're holding short of the runway, and you want a straight out departure. You're gonna do a straight out departure or right downwind or right 270, or whatever you're gonna do. And it doesn't take any more words than that. Torrance Tower, sling 864 Sierra Lima, holding short 29er right, straight out departure. Done. That's all you have to say. They will say, sometimes, there's a lot of different things they'll say. Sometimes they'll say, sling 864 Sierra Lima, stand by. Do we need to reply to that? No. Also, didn't know that for a while, so good to know in the beginning. If they say stand by, you can give them 2 clicks on the mic as a response, but you do not have to repeat standing by for Sierra Lima. They don't want to hear that. They just want you sitting there. You do have to reply if they say 864 Sierra Lima, hold short or continue holding short, runway 29er right. If they use the words hold short, you need to repeat back to them that you know you are holding short. So if they say standby, you're good to just stay there. If they say repeat to continue holding short, you'll say holding short, runway 29 right for Sierra Lima. Make sense? Okay.
See that, it's it seems like all we're counting the price, but it's short.
Yes, exactly, yes. Good that you're listening to the entire ATIS, because most people fall asleep by the end of their transmission with all the NOTAMs, but yes. That's what they're asking for every time, is that you acknowledge that they are telling you to hold short. Even though you already told them, I am holding short, they don't want you to mess it for runway incursions, right? They don't want you to misinterpret their instructions with you are somehow cleared to take off. They want you to confirm, I'm gonna continue holding short until you say further. If they say standby, you're good to just sit there and keep holding short. Okay. What you're going to hear eventually after standby or continue holding short is an instruction to take off, right? So we need that takeoff clearance to pass the hold short line and enter the runway. So they're going to say sometimes a lot of words where they say sling 864 Sierra Lima, right, straight out departure approved, 29er right, cleared for takeoff. The straight out departure approved does not need to be read back. That's just confirming that they know what you're doing and you're good to do the straight out departure. But all you have to say back is 29er right, cleared for takeoff for Sierra Lima, then go, okay? So you'll say if, there's a lot of different ifs on here, hello, spelling. If they say some other instruction like 864 Sierra Lima, straight out departure or right downwind departure approved, 29er right clear for takeoff, continue in the upwind, all call your crosswind. You do have to acknowledge the difference that he added at the end. So you don't have to acknowledge, you don't have to repeat right downwind departure approved, but you do have to repeat the part where he said you need to continue upwind and turn crosswind when he says. So you'll repeat something back that says 29er right, clear for takeoff, continue in the upwind, you'll call my crosswind for Sierra Lima. Make sense? Okay. What other clearances can we get? So when you're out in the practice area or you're over Compton and you're coming back, you can make a call. First you get ATIS, right? Because you need the updated ATIS, and then you make a call to Torrance Tower to come back in to the airspace, right? So was that tower inbound call? Or clearance? This. Okay, then we're going back to 13307, back to tower. So we've gotten our takeoff clearance, we were out in the practice area, now we want to come back in. It's the same who, where, what. Always gonna be who, where, what. So we start with who we're talking to, so they know who we're calling, Torrance Tower. Torrance Tower, sling, blah, blah, blah. Here's my thing. Where you are is easy in the practice area because they are very familiar with all the points. So those points that we use all the time to make position calls out in the practice area, you can use when you're calling tower. You don't have to say you're 5, 8, whatever nautical miles away from the airport. You can say you're over Point Vicente. You can say you're over Angels Gate. You're 5 miles from the breakwire. I don't know why you'd be that far away, but you can make a point of wherever you are over the checkpoints that are out there. So you say over the whatever visual point you're over. Example. Point Furman is a good one that you're usually at because that's right on the end to come in right before for the 29er right to come in straight in. So point Furman's a common one to call. So you say over wherever you are. And then you say inbound. Inbound for the runway is what you mean, inbound. For whatever runway, if you want to request a runway, you could request a runway here. A lot of the times I don't, because I don't care, but if your instructor cares, you could add in what runway you're inbound for with information. Whatever. Some people add full stop to this. We have to do full stop, so it's a full stop is not needed. At other airports that allow touch and goes and all the rest of it where you're cleared for the option, you could add full stop just so they know that you're not gonna stay in the pattern, that you're gonna stop and taxi to wherever you're going, what FBO. If you're going there, so you could add what you're doing. If you're at another airport and you want to stay in the pattern, you could say inbound with information Bravo right close traffic if you're gonna land and go back, or requesting touch and goes if that's what you want to do. But for Torrance, we don't have that, so they're assuming you're gonna full stop and taxi to wherever you need. So you're gonna say Torrance Tower Sling 864 Sierra Lima over, let's say Point Furman, didn't add that. Over Point Furman, inbound 29er right with information Bravo, Zulu, whatever you got. Okay? This is really helpful to have in the plane. And then lastly, when we make a call back to ground, we've taxied off the runway and we're coming back to Sling. We want to say Torrance Ground, Sling 864 Sierra Lima, clear of whatever runway you just got off of. So you say clear of 29er right, or if you just got off 29er left, you say clear of 29er left. Because a lot of times ground doesn't know where you just landed. A lot of the times they can confirm where you landed by what taxiway you say you're on. But it's easy to just be clear about that. Let them know where you are by saying clear of 29er right at taxiway Charlie. If you're on 29er right, you're probably going to be at Charlie. Or if you're on 29er left, you're probably going to be at Echo. So clear of 29er right at Charlie, taxi Sling. That's it. Don't have to say anything else. And they will come back and say, if you're at Charlie, they'll come back and say, taxi a Sling via Charlie Alpha Delta. Almost every time. And you'll say, taxi Sling via Charlie Alpha Delta or Sierra Lima. That's it. Simple, right? Less words, better. Be very clear and precise about what you're saying. Don't hold up the frequency if you can help it. Obviously, there's times where you just literally blank in the beginning and you're holding up the frequency because you can't think of what you want to say, and then you're kind of fumbling over your words. But this is the kind of like consistent radio calls that we want to be striving for. Concise, simple, to the point. Make sure we're giving them all the information they need. Because what's most annoying is holding up the frequency because you didn't give all the information that you were supposed to give the first time. So they have to come back and ask you, if you didn't say with information for the weather, they have to get back on and say, do you have information Bravo? And then you say, affirm, I do have information Bravo. And then that takes up a whole nother part of the frequency. Or you don't say what your intentions are for departure, so they have to come back on and say, what are your intentions for departure? And you have to reply back to that. So the little scripts helped me in private to just organize what I need to say and make sure I was saying everything in one transmission, so we didn't have to go back and forth with ground or tower. This is pretty universal for other airports as well. It gets a little bit different depending on how busy they are, but we are pretty busy Delta for training aircraft. So they understand that we're all training. They're used to, they're not mad at you. Some of them sound really grumpy all the time, even when you're doing everything right. So don't take it personally if they huff on the air, they snap back at you when you have to add something or whatever. Don't take it personally, keep practicing. It's really easy also, just like when you're practicing flows on the emergency flows on that at home, or like chair flying is what they call it. It's also add in some clearances, so if you're chair flying at home, practice saying out loud to yourself in your room, or wherever you are, practice saying, go through this towards ground, saying blank, 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 at the fuel mode, taxi for a straight out departure with information Bravo. And then it just comes off your tongue, then it just rolls. It gets very repetitive. After a while, so you'll be bored of it soon. Don't worry, it's not all, it's not all scary, all the time. Don't get too nervous. Again, everyone says this, but there are people too, just like they've had people training, at Tower the last couple months, and you can tell who the newbies are at Tower, just like you can tell who the newbies are in the sling, because they're messing up on their transmissions, and other people will laugh a little bit, but it's no worries. And just like we talked about, if for some reason you do not understand what they told you and you don't know how to respond, just ask them to say again. Say again is so easy to ask for. It's really common. You're not bothering them. If your instructor's pushing you a little bit to get this stuff, they'll make you ask them to say again instead of giving you the answer, which is hard at first, but it helps you. So here's this. I think we're done for today. We got through everything on the slides. Tomorrow, someone new and fun will be here, so be excited for that. They'll talk about stalls and spins and I think emergency procedures. So I might see you tomorrow in the class. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. I'll see you Thursday for sure.
It's one issue that shoots.